Hello again, and thank you everyone for coming. Thank you very much, Nicolas Traylor, Director of Richmond Rent Program. I'm Sohaila Bana, and I'm very happy that we're having this meeting tonight because I heard when I was canvassing from many housing providers, mom and pop property owners, that they had a difficult time actually, and some of them have pulled their properties off the market. So I just want to make sure that we all know about the services provided. And I usually try to keep the meeting 1 hour or under. So Nicolas, welcome again. Thank you very much. And please tell us about yourself, your program, whatever. And then if there are any questions, we'll go with question and answers. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Bana. Really appreciate the invite. It's been a while since I've had an opportunity to meet with one of the neighborhood councils. I did that a lot at the beginning of the program. Again, my name is Nicolas Traylor. I'm the Executive Director of the Richmond Rent Program. I've been the Director of the Rent Program since 2017, July of 2017, when the program started more in January, but the program essentially started in 2017, and I've been leading the helm since then. We've had some terrific rent boards over the years, and I think, fairly well balanced. And the rent program has developed from a complete startup with 2 employees, myself and Paige Rusa, to build the program to what it is today. And so, of course, I'm happy I'm here, for your invite to answer any questions people may have. Of course, I can't answer every, philosophical question about, the housing crisis. I'm happy to, have a discussion about, some of those matters, but I'm really here to talk about what the rent program can offer, and about some of our accomplishments over the years.
Wonderful. Why don't you just tell us about what the rent program is, how much the revenue is, how it's spent, what services you provide to tenants, and what services to landlords. And then we take it further if there are questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. So the rent program is the agency that administers the fair rent, just cause for eviction, and homeowner protection ordinance, also known as the rent ordinance. And there is a 5-member rent board appointed by the mayor and city council to govern the agency and to ensure that the law is being administered correctly. So the rent program has a budget of, excuse me if it's a bit wiggly. I have had issues with my laptop, so I'm on my iPhone. In any case, we have approximately $3 million budget that has stayed relatively stable over the years. It has creeped up with inflation and with some staffing increases. But with that $3 million budget, we are able to administer the Richmond Rent Ordinance, and we do that by several different methods. But to really understand what we do, I think it's important to understand and our successes. It's important to understand the purpose and mission of the rent program. So our mission is to promote neighborhood and community stability, healthy housing, and affordability for Richmond tenants through the regulating of those landlord-tenant matters that reasonably relate to rents and evictions while maintaining a landlord's right to a fair return. Toward that end, we have provided a little over 35,000 one-on-one counseling sessions with landlords and tenants since 2017. to help inform them about what their rights and responsibilities are, to mediate landlord-tenant disputes. In fact, we've done hundreds of informal and formal mediations towards that end. We have also heard over 240 rent adjustment petitions, and rent adjustment petitions are the other kind of one of the arms of enforcement of our agency. We've also done extensive outreach and education to the community. We've conducted over 60 workshops, had approximately 1,000 attendees since 2017. And we've done a lot more than that. We've also helped provide legal services for landlords and tenants in rent-controlled units. And we also have tracked rents and have data available for landlords and tenants who want to verify what the lawful rents are, so that they can, stay on the same page as to what the law is. Now, all of this is done, all of the things I mentioned is done to promote the neighborhood and community stability that I mentioned, and that's mainly achieved through housing stability. So just if you want to get a general but also kind of specific understanding of the rent ordinance, I would the rent program. I'd recommend you check out our annual report. It goes into quite a bit of detail, and that's available on our website. Now, just the last thing I wanted to say is that we do a blended type of enforcement. So the blend is, in one bucket, you have outreach, education, and the tracking of rents and outreach around that, and the more formal avenue of the rent adjustment petition process. So those two things together enforce the rent ordinance, and we have, in my opinion, I think we've done a decent job of that.
Very good. Thank you very much. Could you also talk about the services available to housing providers, landlords?
Yeah, that's
how
a good.
You've helped them in the past.
Sure. So one of the most important services that we provide are providing housing counseling sessions, and we counsel a lot of landlords on how to deal with difficult situations, from eviction situations, nuisance situations, many eviction related situations that are very challenging, costly, and complicated. And oftentimes it's really helpful to have someone who, although we can't give out legal advice, we can really inform the owner as to what the law is, so that they can at least go in and informed before they have to maybe potentially evict, or they can use their found knowledge or the knowledge they gain to manage their property better, or figure out a way to resolve the issue with the tenant. So we have done, like I said, thousands of those sessions with landlords. We've also held a lot of workshops, a lot of webinars on a variety of issues, from leases to security deposits to evictions to dealing with habitability issues, new laws that come out, emergency laws that have come out. And it's really important, if you're a property owner, you're a rental property business owner, and you want to stay up on what the laws are, and you don't want to have to necessarily call a lawyer, or you're busy running your business. You need experts, you need people who can help you navigate these regulations, whether you like them or not. You need to have help because they're complicated sometimes. The other way that we help landlords is we have a pretty robust property enrollment team that makes sure that landlords are enrolled, that they're paying their fees. And the reason that's important is because, first of all, if all landlords pay their fees, if we have high compliance, the fee goes down, we have a higher collection rate. And the other thing is that if you are not in compliance, you're not going to be able to evict. You're going to have issues evicting because a tenant can use your non-compliance as complete defense to an eviction lawsuit. So we want to make sure that, we've seen many cases. I've counseled many cases where landlords say, I've already started the eviction process. Now I just found out about these laws. Or I've already given the tenant the notice, and I've already done all these steps that they probably shouldn't have done without, getting some counsel or at least knowing what the law was. And so we're there. We have this robust team that helps landlords, get through all the paperwork. It's a difficult process to do sometimes to deal with any government agency. You have to, navigate a lot of different regulations and requirements. And it's better to have help than to have all these rules and have no help. So we're here to help in that way for landlords too. And in terms of legal services, I think you mentioned that, correct?
Yes.
So that has been one of the more challenging things to do. At the beginning of the program, we were going to, our goal was to split the money for tenants and for owners. The only applicants we got for owners were private attorneys, and there's a lot of conflict issues with that. And legally, it's just not advisable to contract with private attorneys. So we contracted with Barrier Legal Aid and the Eviction Defense Center, and the Eviction Defense Center certainly doesn't assist landlords. Their job is to protect low-income tenants, or represent them, assist them in legal matters. But Barrier Legal Aid, also is a tenant based organization for the most part. Most of their funding is for tenants, but they did have some avenue of funding, or they could use some funding to hold legal clinics. And so we've been holding weekly legal clinics for years. They slowed down during the pandemic and became virtual for a while, but those legal clinics were there. Unfortunately, very few owners took advantage of it. And frankly, I think I can kind of understand to a certain extent, but there were very few visitors from landlords to Barrier Legal Aid and their legal clinic. So that, all of that said, this year, as part of our budget proposal, we're allocating $70,000 for landlord, small mom and pop landlord legal representation. No, not legal representation, legal assistance, which may, even get up to limited representation.
I'm sorry, how much did you spend again?
We're proposing, we haven't spent this yet. The board is going to be voting on this soon. $70,000 for legal services for mom and pop rental property owners, who own 5 or less properties.
And versus how much for tenants?
Tenants, Eviction Defense Center has been originally allocated $125,000. Because of the pandemic and because of the immense surge in cases that they had to represent, we've upped their contract by $75,000 so they can keep up with the demand. We haven't upped it; we're proposing upping it by 75 grand. But we're also taking 70 grand and allocating it to a legal service, and this is going to be something that's going to have to go out to bid. We have a couple of interested possible providers, and it looks very promising, which this proposal would provide a 20-hour or half-time, so 20 hours a week. We would have basically a hotline where landlords who qualify or as part of our program, going through our program. This is essentially a hotline where landlords could say, I'm interested in getting assistance, and be referred to appointments to get actual legal advice. The same way tenants
Excuse
have
me,
been able to get
can
actual
you hear
legal
me?
advice.
I'm sorry, it's not question and answer time. Sorry, you'll have a chance to ask questions. Thank you. I just want to explain to everyone the questions I'm asking are for the purpose of clarification to make sure everybody understands. I assume if it's not clear to me, maybe it's not clear to others. So again, to clarify, since 2017 until now, tenants have had legal representation, but landlords haven't had it, but they're going to have for the first time. And if it's passed by the board and goes through, when would it start?
Well, we would start doing the RFP process in, the beginning of the year. I mean, July 1st, and hopefully we'd be able to complete that within a couple months, and find a vendor.
And it lasts for a year, 20 hours per week?
It'd be an annual contract.
Excellent. Thank you. You may go on, and sorry for interruption. Just wanted to
Oh,
clarify.
I think I've said a lot. I don't want to, I mean, I'm sure people have questions, and I know people are probably getting tired or hungry or whatever. So I'm happy to answer questions.
You're very kind and sweet. Thank you. And sorry for the interruption, but I think that was an important point. If Lorraine, if you have a question, and anyone else who has a question, you're welcome to ask now. Lorraine, you need to unmute and talk. Go ahead. Yeah, you're unmuted. Oh, you just muted yourself.
Okay, am I unmuted? My phone is not
Yes.
cooperating.
Go ahead. We can
Anyway,
hear you.
okay, perfect. I am, as a housing provider, I really kind of got confused on this whole legal process that you guys are providing. So to my understanding, you're providing $70,000 for legal assistance for mom and pop. When you say mom and pop, what does that mean as far as how many units you have?
5 or less.
So you're really not helping mom and pops too well, sounds like. Okay.
You think it should be expanded?
Oh, absolutely. Five units is really not mom and pops. Most of mom and pops are mom and pops to me are considered, I mean, I don't know what the number is, but I mean, if you have like 20, 30 units, I mean, I'm talking about doors, that's a mom and pop, because they're probably, a lot of people are still managing their properties by themselves, but 5 units, and you're talking doors, you're not talking about buildings, correct?
I'm talking about rental units.
Okay, yeah, but when you say 5 or more units, are you talking about doors? Like a fourplex would be 4 plus, and if you had a triplex, would that be 6? I mean, 7.
If you had a triplex and a duplex, you would qualify.
Okay, say that again.
If you had a triplex and a duplex, that would be 5 rental units.
Okay, so if you had a 6 unit and a 4 unit, that would be 10. It wouldn't qualify.
That's, at this point, that's what the proposal is.
Okay, so I'm going to make a suggestion that we need to increase that, because I think I'm a mom pop and I have a few more than that, and I qualify as a mom pop. I would consider, because I'm still working, have a job, managing my own. I don't have, enough units to hire a management company, so that would be considered mom pop. So we need to think about, upping that a bit, because that really is not going to take care of the true mom pops that would need legal advice, that really cannot afford, just like the tenants, to go out and hire legal representation.
Okay, I appreciate your feedback. We are in the process. Your timing couldn't be better in terms of giving your feedback, because we're sending out the proposed budget probably tomorrow. So I appreciate you giving me this feedback. If you want to, you're also welcome to attend the board meeting on the 31st, speak at public comment, and let them know, because they have every right to, as the board, to change it as well, whether we internally as staff make a recommendation or not. You're certainly welcome to to come and
So
let
by
them know.
you being the director and on this now, couldn't you make that recommendation that we are considering that is a very high consideration? Because I think I'm really speaking for a lot of mom and pops. So why don't we just go with, going with that as a recommendation?
Well, I
or
don't
no?
now. I appreciate you saying that. Of course, I haven't heard any other views other than yours so far. So I'm happy to hear others, and I'm not discounting yours, because you got my attention.
Because I've been a small pop in Richmond for over 20 years, and there's a lot of people that have units, and people aren't able to participate in a lot of this because we are mom and pop and we do have jobs, and this is like other, we're working that job as well as this, so we don't have as much opportunity to participate in a lot of these forums. It's not that we're not concerned about them, it's just that we have a problem being able to participate because we are overworked in a lot of our other obligations as well as this.
Understood.
Okay.
Understood.
So
All right.
right now we need to get that up. That's a must. That happens.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. And then I know I would like to also add, I don't know if there's a time, but since I'm already talking, I understand that we only have renters on the rent board. And I thought when we first came out with this, I guess that was just in a PowerPoint where they said you're going to have two, I think, renters, you're going to have housing providers as well as homeowners. I don't understand how you just have renters that's representing all our constituents as housing providers. That to me sounds like a totally biased position.
It's not a position, it's just the law. The law doesn't have any obligation to, under the rent ordinance, the only rule around that is that there can be no more than two homeowners, landlords, or realtors.
But
So as a
So
rent
that's
board,
that's
but
that's
as
the
a
rule.
rent board, wouldn't we need to have a fair board to represent your constituents, which we are constituents for housing providers? I don't understand why we have no fair.
Remember, Lorraine, and
Yes.
that I don't appoint board members.
yeah,
Every
Lorraine,
mayor.
let me explain.
I don't appoint. I hear what you're saying, but we've had to date, since the rent program came around, only 2 or 3 tenants on the board, and we've had well over 10 homeowners, 1 landlord, and I think several realtors. So in any
We have
case,
5 renters.
no, right? No, I hear what you're saying. I don't appoint the board, and then I don't get in the middle of those political decisions.
That's
don't
true.
think
The
It's
mayor,
not political. It's not political. It's fair. What's fair? I
hear what you're saying, but
excuse me,
I hear
let
what
me
you're saying.
explain. Lorraine, I understand your point. I strongly urge you to please write to the mayor. The mayor is the one who appoints members of the rent board. And I believe currently at least 4 of them are tenants. Maybe 1 of them is a homeowner out of 5. So, yeah, but thank you for your input, and thank you, Nicholas, for letting us about 31st. If you provide me the information, I will share it with the community so they can attend the meeting. There are a couple of questions in the chat, but we're going to go to Gloria first, and then I'll read the questions to you. Go ahead, Gloria, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. And thank you, Nicholas, for the update. I just kind of want to second some of the things that Lorraine shared regarding Ma and Pa units. And I don't know who or how that decision was made, but I would hope that you hear some voices that doesn't seem fair, because if we don't hire property managers, we're the ones doing the work. And that should be Ma and Pa, because we don't have big people working for us. And then and as far as legal assistance, I understood that it was offered and landlords didn't take advantage of it. But I think that was during the pandemic and the moratorium. But when we're going to court and we're paying lawyers to represent us, where they're getting free and legal assistance paid through our money.
Gloria, is your question ended? I see you're unmuted, but I cannot hear you.
I'm sorry, I somehow hit that button. But I'm just supporting what Lorraine was saying and happy to hear the 70,000 has been allocated, and it might need to be more because you're going to get a lot of ma and pa people needing support in order to move forward.
No, that you're certainly right about the Barry Legal Aid Clinic, although open to landlords and tenants, basically anyone. It was very, very basic. It's not the same kind of robust legal assistance and case management that, say, the Eviction Defense Center does, which is why we are now allocating these monies. But I appreciate your feedback about the mom and pop concerns, seconding Lorraine's, and yes, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Gloria. So for question
Thank
number,
you.
first question in the chat, what if you rent out a room in your private home? Is there any assistance offered and or required? I assume that applies to ADU as well.
So is this question a situation where the owner is renting out a room in their house?
Yes.
Okay,
Or
Well,
if they have an ADU, how does the law apply
Sure.
to them?
sure. Well, if you if you rent a room out in your house and you are the owner, you are fully exempt from all provisions of the rent ordinance. No rent controls, no eviction protections. So as if it weren't even in Richmond in terms of its jurisdiction. It's like if it were in North Richmond. So
Is that the same with ADU?
yeah, so that's with no, it has to be the landlord's primary residency. So it can't be like, oh, I come here once a year while you rent out my house and it's exempt. So now ADUs, these two exemptions I've described and I'm about to describe are what are meant by homeowner protection ordinance. So that's kind of the main homeowner protection is one of the main homeowner protections is this exemption from rent control if you rent out a room in your house. The other is if you have a single family home and you build a permitted ADU on your property, on your parcel, and you live in the main house and you rent out the ADU is also fully exempt, no rent controls, no part of the no rent controls, eviction protection, no part of the rent ordinance applies. Now, it has to be permitted though. If it's not permitted, then it could fall under rent control.
Oh, if it's built illegally.
Yeah, even if you built it, last year, it wouldn't be covered by rent control because if they had built it last year, one of the exemptions with permits, one of the exemptions would be the new construction exemption under the Costa-Hawkins Rental Act, which exempts anything built anything on or after February 1st, 1995.
They wouldn't be under rent control jurisdiction.
Right.
Okay, great. Another question in the chat, where can we read the ordinance in total? If you send me the link later on, I will share it with the community.
I certainly will. It's on our website, richmondrent.org, and you go to laws and regulations.
Okay, thank you. But yeah, email it to me,
I'll
please.
send it for you,
I'll
definitely.
include it along when I send the recording. I'll send the date for the meeting on May 31st. I mean, information about that and also
Great.
the ordinance. Before I let Lorraine ask another question, I have a question that someone asked me who cannot be present, and that's about ARPA money for landlords.
Mhm.
I heard there are landlords who haven't received any rent for months. Would they receive any assistance from ARPA?
So the city of Richmond had a lot of some monies at the beginning of the pandemic. I think they spent well over $1 million, and we worked closely with the city and a coalition of nonprofits and the Richmond Rapid Response Fund to get that money out to the community. Now, I know that the city has millions in ARPA funds that are still available, and they're working on various proposals to use that money. One of those proposals has been to create a rent assistance program here in Richmond. I wanted to bring, and I did bring, an item to the rent board that would have authorized the rent program to administer the rent assistance program for the city. And unfortunately, it wasn't approved by the board. And so at this point, I'm likely to bring that back to the new board because I really think that it's important that the city has some agency that can administer it. Because I can tell you, and when I say we administer it, we wouldn't necessarily be doing it internally. We'd likely contract it out. But the city itself does not have, at least from what I've been told, the resources to administer it. They just don't have the staffing. So they also agree that it makes more sense for us to administer it anyways, because what we do really connects with rents and evictions, and rent assistance connects with rents and evictions. So it falls within our regulatory scheme.
Thank
One
you.
second, please.
Yeah, another question was about eviction, and I'm sorry, Lorraine, but let me ask this and then it's your turn. You mentioned non-compliance because there's a landlord who says his 4-unit complex, none of the tenants have been paying rents for months. He's sick and tired of it, wants to sell it. Can he get him out before he sells it? Can he evict them? What is the eviction requirement? You talked about non-compliance. What does that mean?
Well, just the landlord has to make sure that they are enrolled with the rent program. They pay the rental housing fee. There's no major outstanding code violations or anything like that. And if the tenant hasn't paid rent in months, they have been allowed by law for well over a year to evict for non-payment of rent. There used to be a requirement that you had to, make sure the tenant and you work together to get rent assistance, and there's all kinds of other requirements under the Tenant Protection Act. There are no other restrictions. Now there are some, noticing requirements that are still there, but you work with your attorney to get that, the notices out correctly. So
the procedure is just providing the notice and asking.
First, I would recommend that, owner contact us immediately, because we may have a connection to rent assistance, or maybe at that point we'll be administering it. I would also recommend that they contact us because we have resolved some repayment situations where the landlord doesn't want to have to evict because they actually are very, very concerned about the situation and potential costs and their relationship with the tenant and what have you. So in any case, we're definitely we would advise most landlords to seek legal assistance when it comes to evictions. That trying to go on your own is risky. Because you have to have a valid notice. There's a lot of steps to the process. So it is possible. But before you do that, feel free to, and I encourage you to contact us. We might find an alternative way to either get the tenant to start paying rent and set up a repayment plan, or help you figure out that there is no other option, and the only other option is to evict. And eviction is costly, but it is a way to stop the bleeding financially. It's like stop the leak as soon as possible. It's going to cost you a lot to fix it, though.
Okay, thank you. Lorraine, go ahead with your second question, please. Lorraine, you need to unmute, please.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I work with like different homeless shelters. I don't know if you've heard of Hampton House, Brilliant Corners. Of course, I work with Shelter Inc. Now, when I rent to those agencies and they pay their rent, or do you still pay the full amount for the rent door for that unit?
I don't want to give bad advice about this because I don't know exact situation. But what I can say is that in order to receive the exemption from rent control, you have, and you're doing it because of some subsidy. It has to be a government subsidy. And so if it's not a government subsidy, then it may not qualify. Now, I don't know about the situation because there may be some funding issues that make it governmentally associated or not. I don't know. So but feel free to reach out to me and we can explore that. But if you've been told in the past that it's not a governmentally, it's not governmentally subsidized, then maybe it isn't, and it would need to be, rent controlled, potentially rent controlled. If it's in single family home, then it's not rent controlled anyways.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then one more thing, back to the assistance of the legal assistance. Was that legal assistance only through a hotline? It's not where, like, I think tenants can actually go somewhere and speak to people, right? I'm assuming. So for the housing providers, was that just a hotline only, or was that, would they be able to go speak with attorneys face to face, like the tenants are able to?
Well, when Barrier Legal Aid had their weekly clinic, you could go in face to face. But during the pandemic, it was all remote, of course. Now, the eviction, if you visit the eviction defense center as a tenant, you usually get a phone call first and you have a phone conversation, and then you might go in for an appointment. But when it comes, one of the things that we're trying to do is have this contract with an agency that provide legal services for mom and pop landlords, and it likely would be via Zoom or by phone, but it would be all appointment based. I want a referral, I want a real discussion. You get a whole session with this lawyer who will talk about your case. Hey, well, maybe I can help you write a letter. Maybe what I would do is this, or I would do that. Give legal advice, and then depending on the situation, maybe help file paperwork or whatever.
Thank you. I really welcome this program, Nicholas, you're talking about. It's awesome. But now Lorraine made me think about the definition of Ma and Pa landlords. Maybe we need to get together and actually think about it, because you could have 5 houses, each worth around $1 million, or total of $5 million investment, you're considered Ma and Pa. You may buy a complex with 6 units with 2 million or 2.5 million. You're not considered Ma and Pa. So I'm asking everybody who's present here, if you're interested in such a thing, I'll be happy to arrange a meeting. Maybe we need to talk to the mayor. Maybe we need to have a presentation at the city council so people learn about it. Send me an email if you're interested in following the discussion, because I don't see the people during canvassing who were crying literally about the situation and the hard time that we're going through. But we are one city and we all need to be together to find a solution, increase housing without causing pain to housing providers, especially who do it at a smaller scale. So send me an email if you're interested in definition of mom and pop landlords to be changed. I think that's a valid point. Pam, go ahead, please. You need to unmute. I know you're trying and you're not finding the right button and you're changing your video, but you need to
Go. I got it. I
go
got it.
ahead.
It's just on the phone. Thank you for having this very important talk. I apologize for coming in late. I am a older woman on Social Security and I make my mortgage payment with my renter. I was lucky that the second renter I had pays the rent. The first one stopped paying for 4 months. When I called the police, they said, I have no rights. It's all about the tenant. Has that changed? Because I could lose my house. I could be homeless if I have one of these people not paying rent and being able to drag it out for 6 months. I could literally be homeless. So what is the situation in a situation like this?
So this, first of all, the police can only enforce criminal laws. They don't, unless they're, unless if there's some other order from a judge or something like that, they don't enforce civil law. That's the job of the sheriff, the representatives of the court. So only the sheriff can remove a tenant. Even if the tenant doesn't even have eviction protections, they still have protections under state law, which would be 30 or 60 days notice. And if they don't leave then, or if they haven't paid rent, a 3-day notice. But if they don't leave, you have to file an eviction lawsuit, also known as an unlawful detainer lawsuit. And that's a process that can take weeks to get the tenant out.
It can take months, actually. So
now, is this tenant staying in your house?
No, it's a separate little unit. It's a one wall. So it's part of the house, but it's not in my house. They have their own kitchen, their own bathroom.
Okay, yeah, it would be it'd be a little different if you had a single family home and you had a lodger and like someone living in your room, your house. The police can get involved through a thing called the lodger law. But in your case, it's this tenant has their own separate unit. So you would have to go through the unlawful detainer.
Why is it that the homeowner is going to lose their house if the tenant stops paying rent, is not protected as much as the person who stops paying rent? Why is it in a case where someone is on Social Security, this is their mortgage payment, it's not like they're a big, apartment builder. Why is it that these people, these older women, are not protected as much as these people that squat and stop paying rent? Why is it that we don't have protection?
Yeah, I don't want to be or sound callous, but it's state law. State law provides those protections, and there's jurisdiction issues in terms of like who can enforce what laws. So unfortunately, it's not a criminal violation to not pay your rent in your case. The tenant has every right to go through the jury, the legal process.
It's a form of
due process.
Stealing, not to pay. It's stealing, actually, and even stealing your house. So how do we change
it's
the
not,
law?
I don't, those laws have been around for a long time. Those laws have been around. The state representatives, the voters of California, I don't know exactly. I'm not a lawyer, but all I know is the law would have to change.
All right.
Maybe we need to talk to Buffy Wicks.
But those are big. That's a big statewide issue. And this is, law that is long standing. So it's very unlikely that there would be you know, there probably have been plenty of challenges and been around. I can't imagine it would go away easily.
Yep, but it's our duty to try. So if there are no more questions, I have other questions from other people who shared, and I can ask Nicholas. Does anyone else has questions? Okay, I think my turn to go ahead. I wonder if there is any inventory of the number of rentals in the city of Richmond to see if all the rent control programs have helped it to increase or made it suffer and decrease, or how does it go? Do we keep data?
Yes, we have a comprehensive rental housing database. It took us years to put together.
Excellent.
And in that process, you do a thing where you start off with, oh, we have no idea how many units there are. You hire a consultant. The consultant says there's 25,000 units. And because there's all these, there's like 5,000 suspected units. Over the years, we whittled those suspected units down and found that some of them were rented and some of them were not. And so since the beginning of the program, the estimate, the original estimate has been refined, and now we have pretty good numbers. The original estimate was like around almost 24 to 25,000, and now we're at 19 to 20,000. And I give that range because it does fluctuate annually based on how many people move into their properties, how many people sell and don't rent again. People who rent to their family members, and all of those, there's always a fluctuation. But with that data is very important for us in terms of being able to do our jobs too, and to collect the fees necessary to fund the program. I just want to say before the evening's over that is a very important part of anything that I'd ever want to say about the rent program, which is that the fees paid by Richmond landlords fund the program. And so because of that, the rent program does not draw down on the general fund. We don't rely on the general fund. And so our job as staff to maintain our independence, our financial independence from the city, we work very hard to have good data to be able to collect enough. Now we have some years done done better than others. We in this particularly the last couple of years, our collection rate has gone down because of the pandemic. Right, in fact, right when the pandemic started, we saw our surge, and then as landlords started, suffering more financially, they had to make choices of who they pay, when do they pay, and of course, they might put our bill in the back burner, and so that slows the collection rate down. But overall, maintaining independence from the city is important in terms of having the board be able to make policy decisions on their own, and also in terms of having a board that is dedicated to governing this particular law that Richmond voters found to be so important and so necessary.
Thank you. I have three more quick questions. One of them is about inspections. We hear a lot of complaints from tenants that their units are in terrible condition. But rent program does not do any inspection, or do you?
No, the rent program it's not within our regulatory scope to be able to inspect rental units. That is the job of code enforcement, or actually not code enforcement, they do the outside, but it would be, building division, they're building inspectors.
But would you help with that? Like if I'm a tenant, come to you and say like my unit has mold, or,
We are usually the direct line for tenants who complain, because the city, has had a very internally they haven't had a lot of staff to handle all the perhaps the needs. So they've had this program that's contracted out program that is, as you know, being discussed as needing some revisions. So or needing to be revamped. But no, our job is to funnel tenants and landlords to make sure that they get the resources necessary from the city. And for tenants who have habitability issues, we send a direct referral over to the building division, and they get an inspection usually within a week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The other question is about illegal rentals. Any estimate how many of those we have?
I live in the north and east, and I walk my dog, and I discover rental units, illegal units all the time, just by walking. And I think there are plenty.
Somebody's asking, sorry, what's illegal unit? Would you like to explain what it is?
What an
They
illegal,
haven't registered with the rent board, or what does it exactly mean?
it means that after, I'm like, okay, there's a structure on this property, what property is this? And you go back and you check and you go, oh, this is not even in the city's database, nothing. Or,
Oh, you mean the building is illegal, or they haven't
Yeah.
registered as a rental
the
unit?
building is illegal, they haven't registered. Sometimes it's illegal and they have registered, but oftentimes we discover these properties, and we find them various ways. Oftentimes it's tenants calling us because they're dealing with habitability issues, and oh, well, we've never seen this property in our database before. Sometimes it's neighbors saying, there's a guy building a whole thing in the backyard, and we don't know what it is, or he's got 6 people staying in the back, and then they're making it, so we find out for a variety of different ways, sometimes from fire, sometimes from police situations where there was tenant landlord dispute, those kind of things.
Thank you. My last question is about the accountability of the rent board. Suppose that people here go to the meeting that you suggested is going to be on May 31st, and they can talk about, whatever they need, and suggest that mom and pop definition would expanded or the amount be increased, and they feel like they're not heard. Nobody listens to them. They're dismissed. So is there a remedy? What is the next step for them? How democratic is the process? I mean, how do residents make sure that they are heard? What is the accountability of the rent board? Am I clear in my question?
Well, it's a little bit confusing, but, and I don't mean your question, because I think I understand it. I think what you're saying is that there's how do you ensure that there's fairness, I guess, is that the question?
Thank you. Yes. Yes,
Okay.
perhaps that's it.
Okay, so first of all, staff, we are not advocates for tenants, and we're not advocates for landlords. We're advocates for the law. We just follow the law. We make sure the law is enforced.
But the majority, I'm sorry, the majority of the resources go to help
Right,
tenants,
right.
not
No,
landlords.
certainly,
I'm very
certainly.
glad you're doing it. It's
No,
awesome. I really
no.
encourage it, but it's after 6 years and
Yeah.
1/3 the amount that goes to tenants.
No, and I appreciate you saying that. What I was going to say is that, first of all, I can't predict the future. I don't know. I encourage landlords to show up. They've never come before this board before, and
Really?
I
Landlords
don't think.
usually don't come?
No, this is a new board.
Oh, okay. To this new board, they haven't come, but they usually come to the board meetings, I hope.
So I know that the folks on this call likely have not, maybe 1 or 2 have gone to recent board meetings. But we haven't heard this before in front of the board. So I can't say that, they would or wouldn't endorse the idea or take the concern seriously. I have in my budget report explained the justification for allocating monies for legal service for mom and pop landlords. And in that justification, we talk about the fact that the importance of mom and pop landlords, in the community. Now, this is just my own opinion. It's not necessarily part of the budget, but it's obviously influenced part of the thinking, and that is part of the goal of and purpose of the rent ordinance is to help create a more stable community, have housing stability, better financial stability, all of that for renters and what have you. One of the goals of many renters is to become a homeowner and to improve themselves and buy a property and all of that, what have you. So to, the folks who are mom and pop landlords, many of them were renters. Most of them were renters at one point, and their families bought properties, or they bought properties, and have those properties not only for their retirement, but also for building generational wealth, and allowing folks to get out of poverty, or to help improve their economic situation. So I think that is that's a nexus with the rent ordinance, in the sense that tenants are community members, landlords are community members. Our goal for renters is to help provide housing, stability, but we also understand the importance of mom and pop landlords, and how they help bring the community up as well by again creating this generational wealth that passes on, and again those folks can invest back into the community and what have you.
Thank you very much. And again, I really appreciate this initiative, but you haven't answered my question. My question is
okay.
not about individuals. I mean, my question is about the process.
Mhm.
So the mayor appoints people and they make decisions. By the way, are they on for 1 year or more?
2-year terms.
2-year
And
terms.
they can be reappointed up to 5 times. So they could be on the board for up
10
to 10
years.
years. But of course, there could be a change of mayor, and that changes everything.
How do other cities do it? Is it like an election process for the rent board? Are they always appointed by the mayor?
The different cities have different methods. Some cities don't even have a rent board. Some cities have elected rent boards. Some cities have similar structure that we have. So usually, and it depends on whether it's a voter approved law or a city council law often. Because if it's a voter approved law, it's, usually much more difficult to change it. Whereas it's a city council law, then, it can be tweaked and amended regularly. Now, so yeah.
So in the city of Richmond, if we would like to make it, for example, elective, we need to go through a ballot measure to ask people if they wanted to be through election.
They could, if they want, they could choose to, the voters of Richmond could choose to amend the ordinance however they wish. And it could be that they wanted, maybe they want elected board members, or maybe they want the fees to be split half and half between the landlord and the tenant, or maybe they want, the rent program to administer other programs. It really depends on what the voters want. And so far, this is what we have. We're doing our best to enforce it. And, we think obviously, and everyone else knows, that it's a pretty stringent law and that it requires a lot of work to enforce. But, we're not here to, we're here to enforce it and administer it. But I understand what you're saying. The process here in Richmond is you got to wait till you have a city council and a mayor who appoint folks who you can convince, hopefully to represent your concerns.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Are there any other questions or comments? Or if you have a last word, Nicholas? And again, I really appreciate your coming tonight. And I really appreciate the new initiative to provide a hotline to landlords. It's awesome. That's very great. I very much appreciate it. I strongly encourage it and hope it will expand in the future. So we will have more and Paul landlords that feel like they are a part of the city. Many of them unfortunately feel alienated, feel, ignored, neglected, bypassed. We need them to be a part of the process, to have a voice and, build that trust in the city and its programs that the city works for everyone, all the residents, and brings everyone together for community stability and everything. So
Yeah. Thank you.
I have a question. I don't know.
Can you make it quick? Because I usually let our guests leave after.
It's okay.
1
I'm
hour.
okay.
Well, we need a little time. There's a lot going on and we've been in COVID. So, anyway, I have a quick question. I know you said something about the inspections and I we kind of like went over that kind of quickly. Is there an additional initiative that's being circulated for a different type of inspection or what was that? Yeah.
Yes, I don't want to speak to it because it's not my item. It's a city item.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so because it would be inappropriate for me to lay out the whole thing to you, because that's their job. But what I can tell you is that there has been an initiative to revamp the program and essentially make it more robust, possibly consider bringing some of it, more of it in-house. The details of it, I would recommend that you go to the city council. I'll send a link to Councilmember Bana for the city council meeting that it was about, or that it was on. But yeah, so that's the thing. That's what's going on.
Yeah, they're
Okay, thank
working
you.
on it, Lorraine, for your information. And then I asked the city manager, how do we make sure that the voices of landlords will be heard too? And I was told there will be workshops. They will be announced. If you are on my mailing list, I will announce it through my mailing list. And if you don't hear from me, please remind me. Too many things going on, but yeah, I plan to announce it as soon as I hear about it. I usually inform you about everything that's going on in the city. And I strongly believe you need to have a voice, participate in every survey, everything they put to hear from you. You should raise your voices. That'd be awesome. Nicholas, anything you would like to say to close tonight?
Well, thank you, Councilmember Bana, again, for inviting me to come and to share what I could with property owners. But I do want to also let Lorraine and other members here who brought up their concerns know that I have heard you, and I'll have some discussions with staff about this tomorrow, and I would encourage you to again show up to the board meeting. And if you think there's and if you have a reasonable proposal for the board, you can also put it in writing, or you have an argument, you can send an email. Just send it to our general email box to Attention Rent Board, Richmond Rent Board, and we'll send it to them. Yeah.
Thank you very
So
much.
I encourage you to do that. Thank you. Thank you so much again.
Appreciate it, Nicholas. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we hope to have you again. And if there is any update, please let me know. I inform the community if it passes, especially. Please email me, let me know, and I'll let the community know.
Over this day. She's stepping
Thank you
up.
very much. Have a good night,
Thank you.
everyone. Bye.
Good night. Good night, everyone.
Thank you all for coming tonight. Have a good night.